Fuck that. All right. So everybody, this is Mr. Powell. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, we just want to get some insights upon how you started your career, what lessons you learned, and what you can share with us today. So yeah, our first question for you is like, can you just give an introduction about yourself on how you got started and what your business is and what do you work right now?
Yeah, and feel free if you have questions throughout this, just fire them at me. But so my name's Bryan Powell. I am 45 years old. I recently discovered that I'm 45. I thought for the last few months I was 46. So it was like I got a whole year back. I did the math and got my calculator out. So I own and run Powell Real Estate. Very inventive with the name. I also own and run Powell Construction. I also own and run the Bay Basketball, which is a youth basketball program in Granite Bay. It's technically set up as an LLC, but I operate it as a nonprofit. Um, and I've had several other careers prior to that, but that's what I'm currently doing now. I would say 80% of my time is devoted to real estate and running that side of the business. But I have a residential remodel business with a business partner that where we do probably three, four, five large residential renovations every year. Um, uh, and obviously the basketball part keeps you busy as well.
Yeah. Did you play basketball yourself?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
Collegiate or
No, I played in high school. I actually went to Delaware High School
oh, okay.
nearby. But I have two daughters. They're now in high school. But I I had played, but I became passionate about it, watching them play and kind of seeing the disparity in the coaching that was available to boys versus girls. And so that's what kind of got me into coaching, was to try to provide a better experience. And then I
Yeah.
found out I loved it. And I coach at Granite Bay High School now as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So our real estate is the business that you make for yourself, right? With an outstanding performance rate support support from the community. You manage money properties as a client centered brokerage. So how does that differ yourself? How do you differ yourself from other competitor businesses, and what make it successful?
Yeah, so I launched Powell Real Estate in 2019. Um, the So you probably aren't yet into the home buying process, so this might be very new for you, but there's historically residential real estate brokerages and real estate agents, in my opinion, spend too much time branding themselves and not enough time uh, pouring everything they have into the client. If you kind of drive around town and you see for sale signs up, a lot of times you're going to see a for sale sign and a big picture of the agent right on the for sale sign. And it always struck me as strange that you're trying to sell the house that the sign's in front of. Why do you have a big picture of yourself there? And ultimately, it's to market themselves so that they will get more listings and more business off of it. And I really wanted to create a brokerage that kind of turned that on its head. So be a luxury brokerage that focused on high price points, because that's, where the larger commissions are and that's where you can make more money. However, be very client focused. I wanted my agents to focus on, or not focus on, the commission that they're going to get at the end of the sale, and instead focus everything on that client, on that home, on problem solving, and creating a winning situation for that client, agnostic of where their compensation might be at the end. That is very hard to find. You wouldn't think so, but it is. To get a real estate license in California, you take a 3-month online class. You need 70% grade to pass the test at the state of California. So, I mean, really, you need to be just moderately intelligent and have a pulse, and you can get a real estate license. Then you can take that real estate license, and any brokerage out there will like beg and plead you to come and hang your license with them, because you have to be with the company, or you can't just go buy and sell real estate yourself. You have to have a company that sort of supports you. And all of the big companies out there, they will just take you in. They don't care, what your educational level is, how much you know, whether you care about clients or not. They don't care. They just want you to hang your license because maybe you'll get a sale at some point and they'll get money off of you. Well, I don't do that with my brokerage. I only hire the best agents. So that means agents that have some level of experience, that I find that can truly care about the client, that uh, that ultimately they have a level of intelligence, respect, care of, that I know for a fact they'll take good care of the client. That is, nobody does that really. A couple little small brokerages. So I wanted to kind of create a different model.
Mhm. Awesome. Um, can you tell us how this idea of a client-centered brokerage grew to become our real estate? And what was like starting off funding this whole business and getting started, getting employing people? How was that like?
Yeah, so it was so I take a few steps back. In 2012, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I went to Cal Poly for school, graduated back in a long time ago, 2001. I then worked for a company called Investors Bank and Trust in Sacramento. They were purchased at one point by State Street Bank. And then about a year and a half in, I was brought on to a company called BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. They're based out of New York. I was working in their San Francisco office. I worked for them for 11 years, and I worked on their client relationship management. Basically, I supported clients that use our BlackRock's trading systems like Microsoft. Microsoft has a ton of money, and they have a building devoted to managing that money. Bill Gates Investments. Bill Gates has a ton of money, and he has an entire building, an entire team devoted to managing that money, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. CalPERS, CalSTRS. So I worked with those companies, and for that period of time, really honed my ability to interact with people in very difficult situations, which is it's you aren't born with that. You aren't born being able to interact with somebody that needs something from you and is really pissed off, or very happy, or has a different background or a different language. You have to go through experiences to get that. So I did that, but I always had the kind of a entrepreneurial spirit. I always knew I wanted to launch my own business. In 2012, I started flipping houses. So I didn't leave my job. I was still with my job. I was making good money with BlackRock, but I bought a house in Sacramento. I was living out in the Bay Area. Bought a house in Sacramento, and flipped it. And back then, it was still we're coming out of the financial crisis, and there were a lot of homes that were bank owned, short sales that you can pick up for very cheap, and you renovate and you can sell for good margins. So I started doing that. I loved it. I loved the entire process. So I started doing more of those to the point where I realized, wow, I think I can quit my job and just do this full time. So in 2014, I left my job at BlackRock, gave up multiple six-figure salary, and went to just doing this on my own. Um, Over the course of from 2014 to about 2018, the real estate market started stabilizing more. There were fewer and fewer distressed properties to buy and sell. The margins kept shrinking. I discovered things about myself. For example, I discovered that I wasn't the type of person to do a sloppy job or a subpar job on a house in order to eke out a profit. So I would go in and I'd make this house how I would want it to be. I'd, have the right contractors that did the right job with the good materials to make it look good. And by the end of that, I wasn't making money. So, in fact, I lost some on some big projects that I took too big of a risk on. I lost money. So, within that time, I got my real estate license to try to boost my margins because I was using another real estate agent. So I was giving up, 2.5 or 2% on each side, paying him. And at a certain point, I had done enough transactions where I knew what I was doing. So I got my real estate license in 2016. Margins got thinner and thinner to where I was losing money on jobs into 2018. Right around 2017, 18, I stopped flipping houses, but a funny thing happened in there. I started getting calls from friends and family that would see like my posts of before and afters on Facebook and would say, "Hey, you come remodel our kitchen, come remodel our bathroom." And initially, I said, "No way, I can't. That's not what I do. I do this for flipping." But after a certain point, I realized, well, it's the same thing, except I won't take on all the risk. Flipping, you put your own money out, you then put all of your money into the construction, and then at the end of it, you go and sell it. You could have five, six, $700,000 at risk of your own money. If you do a renovation for a client, they're paying you every week or every couple of weeks, and you really have very little risk. And that appealed to me, but I got to do that same creative process. So I started doing that. Meanwhile, friends and family are calling me and saying, "Hey, can you help me buy a house? Can you help me sell a house?" So I went from just doing it for my own flips to now I was doing it for clients. I loved it. I loved not being a quote unquote investor that was only worried about the bottom line. And I loved helping people, which got me back to what I was doing at BlackRock. 2018-ish into 2019, I realized, wait a second, there's a model here. I think I'm really good at real estate sales. I'm really good at connecting with clients. I'm good at working with clients on the construction side because what's really interesting about construction is most people that become general contractors, they come from a background of being in the trades. So they were carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and they decided to take on more and they became general contractors. Not many of them are college educated, have dealt with clients, have worked in service businesses. So you hear a lot of horror stories about contractors who might do a really good job, but the client has an awful experience because they weren't communicative. They didn't map out their timelines. They were delayed and didn't explain to the client ahead of time why you're delayed. And so it leaves a bad taste in the client's mouth. And I realized I was good at that client relationship part. So in 2019, I had the idea of creating a brokerage that would be based out of Granite Bay that would service the Folsom Lake area, Granite Bay, El Dorado Hills, Loomis, Folsom, which is the highest priced real estate in the whole Sacramento area. Because if you sell a home that's $250,000 in Sacramento, you'll earn a 2.5% commission on average for that. The process of selling that home is pretty much identical to selling a $2 million home that you would earn 2.5% on that. So do the math. You're talking about, maybe a $10,000 commission versus a $50,000 commission for doing the same work. It's just a different price point in a different area. So I realized I can work less by focusing on those higher price point areas. That's where I was established. I was also living there at the time. On the same point, on the same kind of wavelength, when you go in and you help someone buy a house, oftentimes when they go to buy a house, they are going to want to change things about the house. They want to put in new carpet, they want to paint, they want to remodel their kitchen or bathroom. And if you already have that skill set, you could actually offer that skill set and just say, "Hey, I have this background. I can kind of tell you before you buy it how much it's going to cost to renovate this bathroom." And if they really like working with you, then they actually might want to hire you to do that too. So that's how I started. So in 2019, to get your broker's license in California, you have to be a real estate agent for 2 years, and then you can take a broker's test. The broker's test isn't something you can study for per se. It is very much experience based. If I had just worked as a real estate agent for 2 years and took the broker's test, I would not have passed it. But because I had flipped 75 homes and I've been doing it since 2012, and I had lots of different experiences, I was able to pass that test. Created Powell Real Estate in August of 2019. So it's been 5 years now. And so I'll let you in on something. I don't even know if I told this in some of the Granite Bay classes I've done before. August of 2019, I got my broker's license. I'd lost quite a bit of money flipping a year or two before, and I had stopped that. I had my wife and I at the time, because granted, I went from in 2014 making a lot of money to now making virtually no money. My wife has a very steady job and with benefits and everything, so she's, paying most of the bills and all that. We were at the time that summer about $75,000 in credit card debt because of just trying to keep up, and I was telling her, hey, I got this idea. I'm gonna get my broker's license. I've got this model. I know it's gonna work. We got to do it. But we had to go through to get your broker's license. It takes probably 6 months from start to finish before you actually get it. So there's time that needs to happen there. But we were in pretty serious debt, and all signals in my brain, her brain, were you need to go get a day job. You got to go get a paycheck somewhere. I've got 2 kids, I've got, the family, I've got a mortgage, I've got all this stuff. So I got my broker's license, and I'm at that time I was 40 years old and thinking that, well, wait a second, it takes years to build up a good real estate business because a lot of it's referral based. So you have to have transactions, do a really good job, then get the referrals, and those clients, hopefully they'll refer to you, but you need a big base to get that. So I thought, how am I going to get a whole bunch of transactions really quickly? So I looked into a lot of online lead generation sources. Zillow was one that was the main one at the time. Zillow has a platform, or did at the time, where you could basically pay a monthly fee, and they will send leads that go onto Zillow's website, look at houses, and if they want to look at a house, they'll click a button saying, "Show me this house," and it will get funneled to people that pay Zillow, basically. So I had always remember this. I had a credit card that had $10,000 of room on it, and it was going to be $5,000 a month for leads in Granite Bay that were going to be sent to me. And I think they guaranteed 4 or 5 leads at the time. And so I basically had 2 months of tap room before I was like, I'm going to be out of money and I don't know what I'm going to do. In that first month, I wound up, we're in September of 2019. I got 3 clients into contract at 1.3 million, a 1.6 million, and a 1.4 million, I believe. Those were the 3 in Loomis and Granite Bay. And the commission I earned was around $75,000. I paid off all the credit cards, and then I was off in the races. So why do I tell you guys this? Ultimately, there is going to be, when you're an entrepreneur, there's a lot of, you see everything on TikTok and on Instagram, and that it's just all it's all gravy, it's all rainbows and unicorns. It's not. It is very hard. It's very stressful. You're on an island all by yourself, usually, and you have to take some pretty big risks, which are very difficult to do when you're sort of in the middle of life like I am. They're much easier to do when you're the younger stage of life because you've got a ton of time left to kind of recover. But inevitably, you're going to come across very stressful situations that are everything inside your body is going to yell, quit, run away, don't do this anymore, it does not feel good. And that's what kind of weeds out most people from starting their own business or working for themselves. If you believe in what you're doing and you trust that what you're doing makes sense and there's financial gain there and you love it, you just have to kind of trust yourself and move forward. So that's how I started the company. From there, we can jump to other questions because I know that was the longest answer to a very short question. But from there, then I started bringing on agents and starting to grow my team.
I was gonna ask, so going in, did you know there would be risk, or were you a start process and then you're realizing there are a lot of
I have so my wife is definitely the opposite of me, and she knows. I think this is a benefit to me. It's other people view it as not, but I don't. I know that risk exists, but I wholly believe in whatever vision I am passionate about. If I don't jump into things like willy nilly, I think them through. I make sure they make sense. But then when I'm in, I'm all in, and I go through all of that stuff. It's got me in trouble before. I've had massive failures, even bigger than kind of what I just described. That was nothing. But that's the only way you learn.
Yeah, for sure. Going off that, what do you think what helped you recover? And necessarily, aside from that, when you do face a loss, what's your thought process on recovering? Do you reach out for help or?
Yeah. So I had someone you guys have probably heard before, but I had a construction company that I have not talked about. I got a business partner and that already had a construction company. I bought into it, and then we grew the company from basically one employee to 25 employees within 3 months. And this was back in 2015. We wound up losing $750,000 in 6 months because I trusted the wrong person. He did not know what he was doing, and I fell prey to basically a sale. He's just a great salesman. And I learned a ton from that experience. And I still live it because it was it was so painful because I had investors in that. A lot of my investors were friends and family. Everyone was made whole at the end, but that end was literally like 2 years ago. So it took a very long time. But what got me through that was taking things day by day. Honestly, I remember I spent when that whole thing blew up and I realized the depth of what had happened and that there was no digging it out and I had to like sever ties and get lawyers involved. It was like, it was right around Christmas. I woke up on Christmas morning, kids are opening presents and still super happy and stuff. And you've got this giant pit because, excuse me, because of what you're dealing with. But if you take things every day and not worry about, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. It's going to change my life forever. It's going, whatever. And you just focus on what you need to do today to take a step forward and then and come up with an action that will get you out of the hole that you're in, or get you to the side of it, or whatever that step is. If you just focus on that step, get to the end of the day, go to sleep, wake up, then the next step. Go to sleep, wake up, then the next step. You will eventually dig yourself out, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, "Oh, sun's shining, everything's okay." It is okay.
Yeah.
All right, from what you told us, passion and experience got you out of most of the problems. But also help you out with a lot of your success in your life. As college student, we always look for internships and other stuff to get experience for our career in the future. How did you start out? Was it an internship? How do you start out getting into BlackRock and
Mhm.
into like games?
Yeah, yeah. So this is my one sort of, well, a couple of pieces of advice. One, you guys are in college. Perfect. Like there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that says college, you don't need to go to college. No, you need to go to college because it gives you some life experience in a kind of a sheltered area, a sheltered way of getting life experience before you're thrown to the wolves. Two, college degrees are going to open up the first door for you. Once the door is opened, and certain colleges will open up wider doors than others, but ultimately a door will be open to you with a college degree. What you then do with it once you've walked through the door has nothing to do with what college you went to, has nothing to do with your degree, has nothing to do with how much money you have in the bank. It has everything to do with you and what you're going to do with it. So, you guys, so by going to Sierra College, I will tell you what, like there are a lot of people that are their freshman and sophomore year down in Pepperdine right now and are going to go into a $200,000 hole if their mom or dad isn't paying for it. And it is the biggest waste of money that you will ever have in your entire life. If I could advise anybody, it would be go to a JC for the first 2 years, then go to the last 2 years as a 4 year, and you have you're winning before you've even gotten your degree. Now the second thing, and this is how I got the job at BlackRock. I got my first job out of Cal Poly. Like I said, at Investors Bank and Trust. I just went and applied. I was not a great student at Cal Poly. I think my graduation GPA was 2.83 or something. I had a lot of fun down there, and I did not necessarily do like my wife was a 4.0 cum laude. She hangs that over my head to this day. But I got the degree. That degree got me, being at Cal Poly got me an interview my senior year. That degree got me a job interview, which I then got the job. And so that was the door that was open. I didn't know this then, but I know this now, that if you work really hard and you're nice, it will get you everywhere. You have no idea how uncommon it is to be nice and a hard worker. It's the rarest thing in the world. A lot of people are nice and they're lazy. A lot of people work hard and they're jerks. But if you are nice and work hard, like literally the sky's the limit. So I'm generally a nice guy. I also am a very hard worker. So I got that first job and it wasn't anything crazy. I was a portfolio accountant. I just, looked at numbers all day and spit out these sheets at the end of the day that went back to portfolio managers and just made sure that the asset values of portfolios that a company was doing were accurate at the end of the day. But my boss, his name was Simon, he noticed how hard I was working and that I was a nice guy. So about a year and a half in, he left and took a job at BlackRock. And he called me a month later and said, "Hey, I got a job over here. Do you want to come?" I said, "Heck yeah." It was more money. It was a way cooler job. I got to travel. I got to, like those clients I mentioned earlier, I got to work with those clients. And that call came because I was nice and I worked hard. Then I went to the next job and I did the same thing. I kind of went up, went up the ladder there. But that is my number one piece of advice. And it's no one thinks about that, but it's if you think about the people that you like to hang out with, it's because they're nice. And then if you've ever done a group project with somebody in a class, whether it was here in high school, and they worked hard and they're nice, you're like, we're going to be partners on the next one too. It's the same thing in the real world.
Like our club name is Student Commerce and Networking Club. So I just want to ask you, how do you think networking has got you? Obviously, you just talked about that job, but in general, in real estate, how has that helped your life?
Yeah. So I hate networking. So in my mind, networking is I'm going to go to a place, I'm going to meet a whole bunch of people that just for the sake of benefiting myself. And I hate that. Like it just feels so icky. So I don't like the word I don't network. But I go in this, and I'm also an introvert at heart. But I will go and I will be part of groups. Like I will find things I'm passionate about, and I will meet people as part of that. I will go in social circles with friends, and I will meet people as part of that. I don't think that you need to be overtly like in tuned with networking as like the end all be all. It's going to naturally happen if you're nice and you work hard.
Yeah, that's good. And then, so for those who are studying or just stepping into entrepreneurship, what have you learned thus far that you would tell yourself when you were in college?
Yeah, it was well, it's I think that nice and working hard is the main one. But here's the other thing I would say. You're a lot of people think I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm an entrepreneur. And what is my problem? I don't have any ideas. I don't have a business. I don't know what to, I don't know. That's okay. Like it's, you don't, I don't think people are like their career is entrepreneurship. Your career is kind of having in the back of your head that you at some point want to work for yourself. You don't want to go work for someone else and have someone tell you that you need to be here from this time to this time and this is what you're going to make. You don't want a ceiling on that. I think ultimately people that are entrepreneurs just don't want a cap on what they can do and don't want to be tied into what someone else dictates they're going to do. That's it. Now, to get to that point, I would say I always thought when I was in high school, I thought that I would want to run my own business, but I didn't have that. I didn't know what that would be. So you got to make a living. So I took a job, and I worked hard at it. And then in that like 2010, 11, 12 range is when I kind of thought, oh, real estate, flipping houses, that's good. And that was sort of the idea. Now, I will tell you guys about something else that actually, this is technically my first entrepreneurial experience, is I started a website / social media company. It's not really a company, it was just me. And I was this close to being a $1 billion company. And here's the reason why. In It was 2007, I believe. I had this idea. I was building an outdoor kitchen in my backyard, and I didn't have money. I didn't want to pay someone else to do it, so I just wanted to do it. And back then, if you wanted inspiration, like right now, if you want inspiration, you just go on Instagram or you go Google Photos or Pinterest or whatever. There's lots of options to find inspiration for something that you want to do. Back then, there wasn't. It was really Google, and then you're hunting through website after website trying to find outdoor kitchen pictures or patio pictures. I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was a website that just had, you typed in outdoor patios, it would just show you 100 outdoor patios. Then you get your inspiration right there. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to do this. So but I never coded a website. So I bought a book on how to code. It was like coding for dummies or something. And I built a website. And it was called yardshare.com. And it was all about the backyard or front yard. And it was people would come to the site and they would take pictures of their front yards or backyards or projects that they were doing, and they would post them to the website and share them. And people could comment and like them and share them and all that. So unbeknownst to me, I launched that website. I think I got the URL the summer of like 2007. Well, like 3 months after that, there was a website registered called houzz.com, HOUZZ.com. You guys probably may not have heard of it because you don't have homes, but at some point you will probably wind up on that website. It's owned by a husband and wife out of Palo Alto. The husband, I think, was a software engineer. They had the same idea at literally the same time, but their idea was bigger. In which, what I mean by that is they included the inside of the home. So kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms, plus the outdoor stuff. Their company is currently valued at over $1 billion. I sold Yardshare in 2012 for like $10,000. What's the reason between why they're billionaires and I'm not? Ultimately, we both had the same idea. It's a great idea. Everybody has ideas. 99% of people, it stops right there. The 1% will actually do it. I did it. I built it. You also have to execute. So you can have an idea, you can go do it. But if you don't execute correctly, you're capped on how big it can grow. In hindsight, the execution part of it would have been bringing in a partner, bringing in somebody that really knew what they were doing, some sort of computer science, software engineer, to build the infrastructure, and maybe someone else to say, hey, Bryan, what about adding kitchens inside the house? It's the same thing. That would have been pretty smart. So anyways.
Awesome.
So as you said before, your advice for college student is to stay in college, unlike people online. So what is your advice? What are some of the important financial advice that you have all college students, for saving up funds for emergency, for future homes? Yeah.
So general advice, if you get a job and your company provides an opportunity to put into a 401k and they match, do it. There will be a very large temptation when you're 22 or 23 to say, oh man, like I'd be getting $3,000 in my paycheck if I didn't do that. But if I do that, I'm going to get 2,200. I would really like that extra 800 to make a big difference. As someone that's 45 and is has retirement in the next 20 years or whatever, it's super important. Just shut off your brain that tells you not to do that and do it, and you'll be very happy. Your 60-year-old self will be very happy that you did that. Now, when you become an entrepreneur and you have your own business, you don't have that necessarily that company match thing. It's all on you. My opinion, and it's something that I basically do myself, I pour all of the extra money I have into the business to grow the business to where I want to get it. The business is my retirement plan. So it's, and there's most entrepreneurs that you'll find online will say 401ks are dumb, IRAs are dumb. You should be pouring that into your business, or doing or buying property so that you can rent it out or something like that. So two different pieces. One, if you have a job and they match 401k, just put it in the 401k. When you're a business owner, you're going to need to put extra cash into your business so that you will have a bigger business down the road that hopefully you can sell or put on autopilot so it generates cash flow for you. Right now, like it's when you're in college, it's hard. Like you're going to class all day. Some of you guys might have jobs on the side, and you're just trying to get by, and that's all you can do. Don't stress about that now. But at some point, you've got to start putting stuff away in the future. Now, you're looking once you are settled and looking for investments. A lot of people think that buying single family homes as a rental, and I shouldn't be saying this because I would love to represent you if you're going to buy a single family home. But where the money is at is in multifamily. So anytime you can add a unit onto a unit, so a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, 5 units, 6 units, apartment buildings, you are magnifying the amount of cash flow that you can get from those. And when you get above a triplex, so basically fourplex and above, it's considered a commercial property. And when it's considered a commercial property, it means that it's going to be, the investment is valued on how much money it makes versus a single family home. It's valued on whatever the market is doing. So if the neighbor next to you sold for this, well, that's what your house is worth. But if you're at 4 units or up and you figured out a way to go from generating $4,000 in income a month to $8,000 in income a month, you just literally doubled the price of your house, of your apartment complex or units. That's where the money is. So if anyone is a real estate entrepreneur is thinking about that kind of thing down the road, that's something to have in the back.
Along with that, yes, investing in real estate is very important, but for beginners, like you advise investing in stocks and throwing your money that way, or we prefer just having a saving in like 401k, compared to like having it. Do you think stocks are risky in your opinion?
Not for you guys. Like if the time horizon is long enough, it's a great investment. You know, it's funny, I brought up my wife, she's very conservative. She's the smart one in the family. So, I have her where you should have a kind of a safety fund. Like you lose your job, whatever it might be, you've got a select fund there that you can pull on where you're not going to be, out of your apartment and sleeping in your car. So you've got that. Beyond that though, every dollar should be invested. You should not have money sitting in a savings account. Savings accounts do make decent money right now because rates are so high, but they're going to go back down. Every additional dollar besides what you need to live for like 3 months or 6 months should be in some sort of investment. That's either your own business, it's in rental property, it's in stocks, but it needs to be growing, not just sitting. And to be quite honest, if you're like me and it's just sitting, it's very tempting to say, wow, I've got a lot of money. Let's go on vacation. Let's go buy that car. Buying things that are going to lose value are necessary. Like you need to have a car, but they're going to suck you dry.
Yeah. With our generation now, the big thing is Bitcoin. What's your opinion on Bitcoin? Cryptocurrency in general.
Yeah, I got into it a little bit a few years ago, and I decided I didn't know enough about it, so I got out. I don't know enough about it to make any sort of advice on it. I think in general, if you don't really know what something is, where you're going to put your money, don't listen to somebody else. Do your own research, think about it. If it makes logical sense to you, then do it. One of the things I've learned over time is to trust your gut. Your natural instinct that you have is typically right. If you were like, oh man, I don't, this doesn't feel good, but yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. It usually doesn't go well. But if you've done your research on Bitcoin and you think this is where the world's going, or speculative and you think, based on the supply and demand, it's going to go up in value and you're comfortable with that, then do it. I personally never spent the time to really get comfortable with it to be able to make to put my own money into it long term.
That's fair. That's fair.
I was just gonna backtrack a little to your businesses. When approaching these businesses or trying to execute your ideas, what do you spend the most time on? Are you trying to plan your process out? What do you spend most time for executing a business idea?
Yeah, really, it's going to be does it make money?
Mhm.
Is there what's this going to cost me? What can I sell it for? Or if it's a service model, it's a little bit different. But ultimately, what's it going to cost me? What can I sell it for? Is that amount of money enough? And for me, is it scalable? So the reason I started a real estate brokerage is because I realized that for each agent that I add to the brokerage, if they're good, they can bring in X dollars every year of profit. And if I just add agents, then I add profit. And if I do it in a scalable way to where, like I said, I want the best agents. I don't want an agent that comes in and does one transaction a year, but asks questions and needs assistance and help 12 months out of the year. That's not good. But if you have an agent that's going to sell 3 or 4 houses every month, and they need assistance every single month, well, then that's great. And I can do that. So for me, it needs to make money. It needs to be scalable. You have to know what your costs are. You have to know what your risks are. So I'm sure you guys have all heard of like SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. I've done versions of that where I just write down kind of like a pros and cons. Figure out, is this enough money to where it's going to make sense? And if it is, then I do it.
Adding on to that, would you approach it if you know for a fact that you will be in a loss, like for the first few months or so? Would you still approach the idea? But
Yeah, it depends. So all of the businesses I'm in currently don't behave that way. And I grew the real estate business slowly. Like, when I first got the broker's license, it was just me. I proved the model. I did that Zillow advertising. It worked well. I've made money. Then I added another agent. Then I added another agent. Then I added another. And it was like, okay, that went well. Let's add one more. Let's add one more. Because I've had the situation where in that construction company, we went from 0 employees to 20 plus employees in a couple months, and it went awful. And I realized, that's why you don't grow too quickly. So I know there are businesses and startups where you're going to have a whole bunch of costs, but it's usually in the creation of a product.
Yeah.
And that's necessary. You have to do that. In which case you have to either have the money to have that runway, and you have to be conservative about it. So you have to know like this is going to, if you think this is going to take 1 year to develop and get to market, probably going to take 18 months, or it's probably going to take 2 years. So you need to plan for that, because the worst thing is to run out of money, have to go find an investor. Now you've got a partner, or maybe you've got another partner, and you get diluted, and then you're not in a good spot. So be conservative with whatever you're going to do, because it never goes exactly how you think.
Okay.
The other last thing I'll say, but just about starting a business or any ideas you have, once you've gone through that analysis, and that should not take long. That should take a couple days at the most. And then in your gut, it's feels right. Just do it. Like, life is too short to think about ideas for years. Like, I know I have plenty of friends. They're the idea guys. They've got this idea and that idea and that idea, and they never do them. I'm like, well, what's the point of living? Like, we're only here for this certain amount of time. What's the worst that can happen? You lose money. Oh, well, you will make more. Like, in all honesty, that's really what it comes out to. It gets more complicated when you've got kids and wives and not wives, wife. It does get more complicated as you get older. But when you guys are young, man, just bang out the ideas. Just try it, because you'll get more life experience so much faster than if you wait. And that life experience will then, help you to, when that right idea does come, you'll be able to execute it that much better.
I saw on your Instagram that you posted about the update on the real estate law within California. So what's your opinion for the people on the real estate market right now currently?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, so massive changes in how real estate kind of the process of how buyers interact now with their agents. And really what it used to be is sellers, when they go to sell their house and they talk to me about selling their house, they would have to agree up front to a commission, usually a percentage commission that they're going to pay me as their listing agent, but then also pay the agent representing the buyer. And that's determined, upfront before they ever list the house. There was a lawsuit over that over in the Midwest. There's like $1 billion, judgment, and I think a $400 million settlement. As part of that settlement, the National Association of Realtors said, okay, here's how we're going to do it now, which is now when you go to sell a house, the seller only agrees to pay the listing agent. So if I'm representing them to sell their house, they only agree to pay me. And so that's X percentage. The buyers, they have to now go find their own agent, which they were doing before usually, and they have to agree to a commission amount or a fee structure with the buyer. The buyer never had to do that before. The buyer got to go buy a house and not pay a commission. It was only on the sell. But now what's happening is the buyers have to go out, they have to hire their agent, they have to agree to the agent's fee, and technically in the terms of the contract, it will say, I, buyer, agree to pay you, agent, X amount when we close a transaction. But the buyer in the offer to purchase a house can ask the seller to pay for it, to pay the buyer's agent commission, which is, I'd say, like 90% of the time, that's what's happening now. So there were a lot of changes. We've had to change procedurally how we do things. Generally in the market, I would say there hasn't been any impact. There's I've seen a few exceptions in some of the stuff that we're doing at Powell Real Estate, but by and large, homes are still selling and buying at the same pace they were before. This year, 2024, is kind of a slow year in general, but if anything, I think it's a good thing because it increases transparency with the consumer, with the buyer and seller, and it forces them to have very more deep conversations about the services each agent is providing, how they're compensated, and how the whole process will work.
Um, with getting a loan, it require credit score and all that stuff. With Dave Ramsey online saying you don't really need a credit score, you can do it through this method and that method without a credit score. Get a loan for a house, you feel. What's your opinion on like credit score and like getting a credit card and getting into debt? Is it bad to get into debt, or is it like isn't it a necessary thing, or is it not a necessary thing? In your opinion?
So two ways to think about that. One, let's talk about debt. Debt is only good if it's being used for the purpose to make yourself more money. That's it. So debt for buying a home is good because you can basically leverage that money. You can buy a $1 million house by putting usually $200,000 down. If you have $200,000 and you weren't willing to take on debt, well, you're only going to buy a $200,000 house. Then if that if that house goes up 10% on the $1 million house, your house is now worth 1.1 million. So you just took your $200,000 and it went up by 50%. Now you have $300,000. Where if you just bought a $200,000 house all cash and it goes up 10%, you made $20,000. So in situation A, you now have $300,000 in equity. The other situation, you have $220,000. So that's a situation where leverage is good and debt is good. Credit card debt is not good. Again, unless you're starting a business. In that situation that I had bad credit card debt, $75,000 of bad credit card debt that we needed to live. But I used 10,000 of it to invest in myself, which paid off, and I wound up being able to pay it all down. For credit scores, I don't know. I know Dave Ramsey, I know some of his philosophies, but I don't know in particular how you would go about doing that. So what I would advise in terms of being young and working on your credit score is be disciplined, use a card occasionally to pay for things, then pay it off. If you're going to hold a balance, make sure it's a super small balance. I think things will take care of themselves over time. But I wouldn't do not take on debt and hold on debt and high interest rates for the purpose of boosting a credit score.
Building on that, I have a question about well, the process of buying the house. You gotta put down a down payment, right? And sometimes people recommend having 5% or up to 20% for a house. How much?
Depends on the loan. If you're a first-time home buyer, usually you can get your down payment can be 3.5% to 5%. The important thing with that is make sure that you will be qualified to buy the house, because the lender won't give you that loan unless technically you're qualified. But you have to be comfortable. There's a difference between being qualified to purchase and being comfortable with it. So you have to be comfortable with that, what that payment is, and that you with your lifestyle, it's not going to put you in a really difficult situation. Right.
Yeah, that's another question. This is not applicable to college student at all because none of us gonna start buying house anytime soon. But
Maybe.
yeah, maybe.
There's a few of us.
Sorry, guys. I don't know about your financial status right now, but online there's a lot of talk about. Well, I remember multiple influencer about refinancing your home to put it into another house that you can rent out, right? And with the expenses of like maintenance, being a landlord, time commitment, the things that got it for normal, like first homeowner or like a normal without the influencer money to start like refinancing their house just to put to another property and maybe going to like a debt that they can't pay off right away, or is it?
Yeah. The answer is it depends. It really depends on the financials of the property that you own, that you're refinancing and taking cash out of, and then what you're buying. So if you are taking the money out of your primary home, the home that you live in, and then you can take that money out and then buy an investment property. And that investment property cash flows, meaning you receive a check in the mail you receive a check that is, and keep the money that's greater than all of your expenses, then it can make sense to do that. If it's a good purchase in a good neighborhood that's going to appreciate in value, that's a good thing. But if you are pulling money out that's going to make you go negative every month, then it's probably not a wise situation unless you have the income to kind of support that. So every single deal in the investment world, you have to analyze separately. So a lot of times on social, they're going to talk about that in very big, like rosy terms, but ultimately you just have to analyze each deal. Like I have a spreadsheet that I use that will analyze every rental property and whether it's cash flowing and what the return on it's going to be. And if you need to pull that to get that down payment, you need to pull that out from somewhere, and you can again afford whatever payment you're going to have on that, and whatever rate it is, then it might be a good decision.
As a flipper yourself, you flipped house before, right? But you make sure that the redesign and the property is good for sale. I've seen a lot of videos where nowadays DIY flippers, they've been doing a lot of stuff by themselves. They recommend people to handle most of the construction by themselves, or would you recommend them to contract a contractor to get all that stuff done?
If that is your trade and you are good at that, then fine. But if you're an accountant by day, and then I would highly recommend that you bank in the cost of hiring a general contractor to do it. I'm saying this from a person that's going to wind up helping you sell that house. When you go to sell the house, you have to disclose everything you know about that house. You're going to have to disclose that me, Joe, the accountant, remodeled this whole house myself with these two hands. And maybe Joe did it without pulling permits at the county. And right away, anybody that walks in, like if you guys are going to go buy a house and you found out that this guy, at night just renovated this whole house himself, he didn't have any supervision, he didn't have engineers look at it, whatever it is, you're gonna be like, I pass. Or you're going to say, okay, I'll buy it, but I'm buying it from way down here because I have a feeling that I'm going to have to fix a whole bunch of stuff. So if that's what you do, then great. And a lot of general contractors or people in the trade will do that because they can put their own time into it and not have to pay money, so they get good margins on it. But if that's not your wheelhouse, it is not worth your time and effort to do that, because I think it's going to bite you in the long
I just want to ask, from what I've heard, it sounds like you've worked a lot with customer side of things and customer service. So have you ever been involved in liability where something went wrong and you're liable for that?
run. Yeah. So I made a mistake when I flipped a house in Auburn in probably 2015, maybe 15 or 16, somewhere back then. No, definitely 14 or 15. I didn't have my real estate license then, so it was before then. So the disclosure process I just talked about, when as you as a seller, you have to disclose everything you know about the property. So I had gone through a bunch of these, and I went through this disclosure process, which is just a bunch of forms where you check yes, no, you write things. I went through it just really quick and sloppily because I was doing a lot of these. And I did not, for a house in Auburn that we did, I did not disclose. There's a checkbox on whether you pulled building permits on it or not. It's worded kind of differently, but basically I checked the wrong box as I was just kind of blowing through it.
Yeah.
I also was not descriptive in everything that I did in the house. So I didn't do sloppy work. I didn't tell my guys to do sloppy work. I was just very flippant with that seller disclosure process. Somebody bought that house from me. They had, in a big storm, they had some of the windows leak. The windows were new. I heard about it via their other agent and my agent at the time. I sent the guys that installed them out there, and they tried to figure out what was wrong. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. And they said, okay, if anything happens, call us back and we'll come out and fix them. Because I always stand by my work. If it costs money to fix, I always will. Nothing, never heard from them again. Maybe 4 months later, I get a letter from an attorney saying they're coming after me because of non-disclosure of issues. They opened some walls and found dry rot. They found lots of issues, and they felt that I was trying to deceive them and cover all that up. And I was not, but because I hadn't filled out everything and I did it just so, carelessly, it looked like I was hiding things.
Mhm.
So I wound up going through a very difficult situation where they were suing me for, I think they wanted like maybe $60,000. I had to hire a lawyer, pay for attorney's fees. We wound up going to mediation. I didn't know what mediation was. I thought what mediation was that, there's a retired judge there, and what they would do is they would say, "Oh yeah, Bryan, you're totally good. You did everything right, and you tried to help them, and yeah, so you're good." And so I went in there armed with all of my stuff. I said, "This is what I did. Here's all the work I did. Here's the contractors I hired. Here's our communication. I told them I would fix anything." But what it really is that you sit in a room by yourself with your lawyer, and they are in another room with their lawyer. The retired judge, who's the mediator, comes into your room, listens to you for a sec, then goes into the other room, listens to them, then comes back and said, "Bryan, they won 60,000. I don't remember the number, but somewhere around there. But I think we could get this settled for 40." I said, 40? What are you talking about? Like, I laid out all this information. He's like, "Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so what do you think? 40?" I'm like, "No, not 40." He's like, "Okay." He goes in the other room, talks to them. Basically, his job is to get the two parties not to go to court or go to arbitration. And so I wound up, I think, having to pay, I want to say somewhere around $25,000 or $30,000, and I did that over the course of 3 years. I got the chance to go into the room with them, apologized, told them I would do all that stuff. And I did that before the settlement was agreed. They basically, and from their standpoint, I was a crook. I was somebody who's trying to take advantage of them and get them to pay too much for a house.
Yeah.
So I learned a huge lesson there later on when I got my real estate license. And now when I sit down with every single seller, we sit down and we go through every disclosure, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this happened like 6 years ago, but that was fixed. We don't need to put that there." I said, "Yep, put it on. Put it in every single thing you know about the house, everything you fixed, everything you've thought of. Even if you think that room smells a little weird on, when it's sunny on Tuesdays, put it in there." Because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to sell the house to somebody that would not have bought the house if they knew some piece of information. Because if that happens, they are going to call their attorney 3 months, 6 months down the road, and you are going to go through hell. So it's much better just put everything down in writing, put everything that you know, and they're probably still going to buy the house, but now they feel good about it. So that's just an example of, when you go do these things and you know, the more life experiences you have, the more stressful situations that have, the more failures you'll have, they will then create the kind of the foundation for how you do things in the future. And to be quite honest, the more stressful situations you have, the more stress you can deal with in the future. I can deal with a lot every single day. There's problems thrown my way, and it's nothing like the stuff I dealt with. So it's fine. Whereas I know other people that I'm friends with that they get the smallest amount of a stressful situation thrown their way, like the Amazon delivery guys a day late, and they're freaking out, and because they have never had to deal with stress, they don't know how to deal. You have to deal with it to be better at dealing.
Um, I think that's all we have to say. If you guys have any questions.
What you study at Cal Poly?
Business with a business finance.
The finance concentration?
Yep.
So about the guy you basically invested in, the wrong guy you invested in, like for the construction company, did you do an inappropriate background check, as in like not thorough, or did he just basically lie about his experience?
It's a really good question. I wouldn't say he lied. He just so I did not do a thorough enough job looking at the financials of the company that I was basically buying. So it was his company I was buying it.
Hmm.
I glossed over a lot of things that in hindsight were like, oh, yeah, there's a red flag right there. There's a red flag right there. Looking at some of his prior tax statements, because I got all of that. But I just I went through it with the lens of I'm doing this deal. So when you go through it with any deal, whether it's real estate or business, if you go into it thinking that you're going to do it, then you're going to do it. And no matter what's presented to you, you're gonna put the right lens on it. And just like if you go online and you're predisposed to a certain political party or a certain position, and you go and you do Google searches, you're going to find everything that supports that. Well, that's right. I found everything that supports what I want to do. So you have to be willing to walk away from any deal and be comfortable with that going in, and then you'll see the things for what they really are. That answer your question?
Kind of like, I know.
Okay. So ultimately, I think the point that I'm trying to make there is don't listen to what someone says.
Okay.
Listen to listen to their actions.
Okay.
Listen to what's on the paper. Listen to basically when you're going to go into a deal and it's going to be a lot of money type deal, don't just take their word for it. That's what I did. Yeah.
I'm just curious what your opinion about the overall real estate market is like right now, because I've heard from a few people that it's poor right now.
Yeah, I read something the other day that saying that the volume of transactions this year is on pace to be worse than last year. And last year sucked. Yeah. So it's not good. Really what's happening is, interest rates in 2020, end of 2022 and 2023, they went much higher. So got up to like 7%, whereas not historically, but in the last basically 10 years, they've been down around 3%. So when they shot up to 7%, all of the buyers said, whoa, wait a second. Now, the $1 million house that we were looking at, we can't afford that house anymore. We can now afford a $750,000 house. Well, we don't like the $750,000 houses. They're not big enough. They don't have the pool we want, whatever that might be. And then on the flip side, all the sellers are like, well, if I sell my house, I've got a 2.75% interest rate and I'm paying this much for my current mortgage. If I sell my house, I have to buy something. And if I buy, I'm going to buy it at a 7% interest rate. I'm going to be paying this much. And so it created a situation where no one was buying and no one was selling, relatively. Rates pretty much stayed the same this year up until like about a month or so, month and a half ago, and then they started dropping. They're down around 6% right now. But what we're still seeing is it's still fairly stagnant. Over the last month, we have seen more buyers. Like even this past week, I've had a lot of people start to call me. We use our phones as like sort of a test on what's happening in the market. Because if our phones are ringing, it means things are about to happen. If our phones are dead, it means things have slowed down. So we can usually see things before they're announced in the news because it's where it's happening in real life. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We're going into the slow season right now with the holidays. So I'm cautiously optimistic that there's some pent-up demand that's going to kind of make 2025 better than this year. But no, you're totally right. It's been slow. Yep.
From a like an outside perspective, someone who's not in the real estate market, how do we tell when the market is bad, when it's good? If it's like a bubble or whatever they say. How should we be able to figure out when to buy, when to sell, like that time?
Yeah. Call me. I'll tell you. And I'm being funny, but really, so a lot of people, there's a lot of with this all this real estate changes. There's a lot of people online right now that say, we don't need real estate agents. We're just going to do it ourselves. Like, I don't do my taxes myself. Like, could I? Yeah, I could figure it out, but I'm like, I want to pay the accountant who like went to school to like know how to do it. I'm going to pay that guy to do my taxes so that I don't have to spend all kinds of hours doing it, make a big mistake, and the IRS comes calling. Like, so, this is like what I do all day long. So that's the short answer. But if you were like more of a DIY person, you're like, hey, I want to just know what are the signs? The signs would be going online, going to Zillow or Redfin or something, do like show me all houses that have been on the market for more than 90 days. And you probably, when you first look, you don't have anything to bump that up against. So you're like, oh, I see a bunch of houses. So it would probably be a time period thing. Like, so if you did that now and you counted in like, let's say, Rockland, it'd show me everything that's been on on the market more than 90 days in Rockland, count them, and then do that every month. If you see that number grow, we're in a slower market. If you see that number decrease, the market's picking up. That would be the kind of the easy way to do it.
And in a slower market, houses are more expensive than a slower market. Fast market, they're less expensive.
Flipped. So when I say slow, I mean that there's fewer transactions happening, which means that the people that are trying to sell their house aren't getting offers on them, so they're going to drop the price because they want to initiate an offer. So usually when there's more homes on the market, prices are going either staying or going down. When there's fewer houses on the market, prices are staying or going up. Yep.
It's just like a random question about like real estate in general. So if let's say I had enough money to either rent or buy a house, what would be the best choice to do? Or would that just depend on your own finances?
Sort of depends, but let's just say, let's say you have enough for a down payment on a house. Let's also say that the rent that you would be charged is the same amount as the mortgage that you would pay. So just all things being equal, sort of. And you're in a place that you're going to live in, like that. If you were to buy, you would be living there for at least let's say at least 3 years. Okay. If you're going to live there at least 3 years, I'd say you should buy the house. If you are probably going to move to a different city inside of 3 years, then I'd say you should probably rent the house. And the reason I say that is there's always a risk that house prices are going to go down. Really 3 years is kind of short. I would probably say 5 years, but I think I think somewhere in that 3 to 5 year range, you are a little bit less likely of a short-term swing and things will stabilize more. But there's inherent costs with buying and selling a house. So you're in a normal situation, when you sell a house, you're going to pay real estate commission, you're going to pay fees, the county's going to take some money from you, the city's going to take some money from you, the escrow company's going to. So it's an expensive ordeal. So you don't want to do that really quickly. You don't want to buy and sell a house in a year. You almost will always lose money. So it's more time horizon. If you're in a place where you're like, yeah, my job is stable, I'm going to be living here for a while, then always buy. Your job's not stable, you might be moving. I would always rent. Unless you're in a position to where if you moved, you can keep that house as a rental, then buy. Because if you were like, some people do that. I property manage rentals for some people. A client just moved from Granite Bay to Florida, and they said, we could buy over there without needing to sell. So we're just going to rent it out, and they get cash flow from it. So that's another option too. Yeah.
So if a bill is being passed at the state or federal level that directly affects your business positively or negatively, how do you generally start accommodating that being passed if you know it's going to happen?
Yeah, so if I know it's going to happen, and it depends on who it's going to affect. So if it's going to affect my clients, so there's shoot, I don't have the proposition number in front of me, but there was a proposition in California that was passed a few years ago that made it so that you could move once you're over, I want to say 60 years old. Again, don't quote me, but somewhere when you're older, and you can move anywhere in California and basically keep your tax base, your property tax base. So if you're only paying $2,000 a year in taxes, and you move to a home where you would now be paying $10,000 a year in taxes, you can keep that tax base, and then there's a percentage it will go up, but by and large, it's still really low. So when that came out, we were letting our clients know, both sellers and buyers, that, hey, this is happening, just so you're aware. So if you've ever been thinking about selling, but you didn't want to because your property tax base would go way up if where you were going to buy, that's an option. If it's internal to just how we do business, I have a operations manager who's awesome, a compliance and operations manager, and she would get all of the information we need on that. She would present it to our entire team. We talked about it. We make sure we're prepared for it, and then move forward. The associations we're a part of are really good about letting us know when things like that are happening if we don't hear about it ourselves. But those are just a couple examples of how we would deal with it.
Oh,
Sure.
so at your team level, when you're hiring new people, do you personally screen the individuals that you're going to hire, or?
Yeah, that was going back to the beginning where I said, if you have a real estate license and a pulse, EXP will hire you, Coldwell Banker will hire you, Remax will hire you, Keller Williams will hire you. Can't wait to use this on social media. They will hire you because they don't care. They want headcount and hope that you're going to get a transaction. I am not. I'm the opposite. I want the best. Like, it's so strange to me. If you were to go interview at PwC or Deloitte or AT&T or any big company, you would go through an interview process. You would be interviewed, you'd be scrutinized. They would figure out, are you a good fit for our company? And it's not the norm in real estate. So what I do is I usually will talk to the agent first, casually over coffee. Then I will have them meet with our director of operations. I'll have them meet with our sales and marketing director. Probably have them meet with one of our agents, because we have a very close-knit culture that we want to try to protect. And then if it passes all of us and we feel like, yeah, this person will be awesome to join, then we're going to ask them to come and join if they're willing to. But if they don't along those checkpoints, then we wouldn't.
I have one more question.
Only one more.
So far in your business, have you had any competition from foreign markets? For example, in my hometown in Monterey, a current issue that we had dealt with was Chinese investors coming in, buying up the whole street, not selling it, and then not sure what to do with it after the end of the plan. And people aren't able to.
Yeah, I haven't seen that here. Yeah, I know that's much more common in the Bay Area, and usually at the much higher price points. But I have not, I haven't dealt with that. Mhm.
Through the screening and hiring process, how do you weed out the bad agent? And then with that, once you hire them, is there like a red flag where you let them go? 'Cause it's hard for me as co-president. It's hard for me to let go of my leads right now. Even though
Oof.
Yeah, they're not even here today, so.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's, like even with that, it's really like, just like the relationship going on, it's really like hard, like send them a message like, yo, not working out. Like sometimes ego get in the way of like, hey, I picked them, I can't let them go.
Yeah.
How would you deal with that? Like, would you just ego out just paper facts, or are you like, maybe give them another chance, two chance, maybe three?
Yeah. So the first part of that question, how do we kind of find the good people or how do we like weed out the bad? It's for me, I do want a little bit of experience. I don't need someone that's been doing it for years and years. I actually prefer someone that's maybe hasn't been doing it for that long, but has some transactions under their belt. And generally it makes them kind of hungrier. I will look at their online reviews. It's kind of big in real estate that you ask your client to review you. Most people only ask the clients that they had a really good experience with to review them. So I kind of weed through that. I look for certain kind of key words that kind of jump out at me that show sort of passion from the client that posted the review. I will try to find uh, agents that they worked with in transactions, so it's all publicly available, and I'll call the agent and I'll say, "How was your experience with so and so?" Then beyond that, I can ultimately I want someone that's going to be really good with clients. If they're really good with me, they're nice, and with my agents, generally they're going to be good with clients too. So we kind of go through a little bit of that process. It's kind of any sort of what any company would do when you're interviewing someone. Now on the flip side, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with letting anyone go. Ultimately, for me, what would cause that to happen is if they are continually sloppy with a transaction and with a client where they are making mistakes. Ultimately, I own all of the responsibility for all of my agents. We deal with legal contracts constantly. And if you are sloppy with the real estate contract and all of the pieces that go along with it, then that is, I can't tolerate that because it's a huge risk to myself and my business. And if you are not responsive, and I hear complaints from clients because you're not responsive with clients, or you're providing bad advice or whatever, and it's habitual, then that would be the end of the road.
The screening procedure you do, that how much does personality come like make a part of that? Because sometimes when you're very passionate at something and then you're good at it too, it builds an ego in yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's with the pressure of an interview, a little nervous. So then you try to like project confidence, and sometimes it can come off as egotistic or
Yeah.
just not being a very good generous person. How do you, well, I mean, for a student like going to interview, how do you like project that you are competent with your job and what you do without, going overboard and then being, unlikable?
Yeah, I think so. Preparation is everything. You with anything you do with life in life, somebody that's talking to you knows right away that whether you were prepared to meet with them or not. I'm going to a listing presentation tomorrow. What I was doing the hour before I got here was I was reviewing, getting ready for that, prepping. I think I could talk my way through it, but every time I prepare for something, I learn something new. So if I'm going to be going to interview for a company, I'm going to learn everything possible that's out there about that company and that role before I walk in the door. If they ask you a question, and they very well may, about, so what do you think about our company? And you give some very generic answer back, they know right away that they have their BS meter on. They know that you didn't, we're just another job. You've got another interview tomorrow. So you need to project the fact that you want to be there. You're excited to be there. You've done the homework. You know exactly everything you need to know about the role. The questions you ask should be good questions that show that you actually want to be a part of their company. And if you show that you are interested and you want to be there, that's 90% of it. If you aren't qualified for it, they probably wouldn't have brought you in anyway. But if you show that you want to be part of their company, and they're going to feed off your energy. So I would worry less about the words they're saying. And if you ramble on, you ramble on. Like I listen to me, I've rambled on a ton, and I'd like the 15-minute long answer to one of the questions. That's okay. If you show passion, and that you want to be here, and I want to be here today to talk to you guys, then it comes through.
I just want to go back to the business side of things. You said you studied finance, so I've heard that accounting and finance are kind of the number side of business. Do you think that's helped you in a lot of your business endeavors, knowing the number side of things? Or?
Yeah. So the stuff I learned, and with a finance concentration at Cal Poly, I couldn't tell you any of the stuff I learned, to be quite honest. Like some of the stuff, is very high level math that can all be done on a computer or calculator. And so when you get in the real world, it's like you're not like doing equations and all that stuff, right? But numbers are everything. Like the number one thing and the number one class that you should be taking is I don't know what it would be called, but it's basically the class where they go through profit and loss statements, balance sheet statements, because that is the backbone of a business. And if you don't know your numbers and you don't know how profitable you are and where your expenses are coming from, then you're destined to fail. If when real estate, you also need to know how interest rates work and kind of a little bit about how the economy works and what drives mortgage rates. But at the end of the day, you just need to know where your profit and loss and expenses are.
Sure. And now that you're at a stable point in your business, you think delegating your work or other parts of your business helped you stabilize, or?
Yeah, and my business is not stabilized. Just to be clear, so I just opened because I launched in 2019. We went into 2020 and COVID hit. So I was just working out of my house, and then COVID hit, and I was glad I was working out of my house because everyone that had a real estate office, like they were still paying rent, but they couldn't use it. So I just opened my office in Granite Bay. It's on the corner of Auburn, Folsom, and Douglas in the Raleigh Shopping Center there, like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I got a space that has on glass on 3 sides, so it's not just like storefront and then walls on both sides. You can see it from Auburn Folsom. It's the entrance into the shopping center. It is like the best marketing position you can find. And I wanted a business or a physical space that was not stuck in some office park somewhere. It had to be a marketing play. So I signed the lease last June, not this past June of 2023. We just finished construction beginning of September, and we opened the office, and it's beautiful. I wanted to be a place where clients could come in and feel like they're in a luxury brokerage. And it's amazing what creating a space and creating a almost an illusion, but it's a physical space of luxury and of just having a physical presence does to your reputation. If you do not have a physical presence, you're sort of just out in the world. Or out in the kind of the ether and on the internet, and you can still be super successful. But the moment that you have something that's brick and mortar, all of a sudden they say, "Wow, yeah, Powell Real Estate. They're something." They don't know it's me and like 3 other agents right now, and we're like scrambling our butts off. So right now, I just finished that. I spent way too much money on it, so I've got a lot of expenses I have to make up. The ongoing monthly expense of that office and everything that comes with it, someone that's going to be there every day. I added a director of operations and compliance, a director of sales. I wanted to create the foundation for adding more agents. So with that office, I want to get to 15 full-time agents. I have 3 full-time right now. So I'm in a mode of trying to bring on agents, which is difficult because, again, if I just said, "Hey, I'll take anybody," it'd be easy. I'll get to 15 in 2 weeks. But I want special people, and that's hard. So it takes time. So
sure.
So let's say an agent is representing the seller, and the agent really loves the seller's house and wants to buy that house. How will commission will work on that?
So most likely the agent would waive all commission on that to try to incentivize the seller to sell for the house. Because Most likely the seller has an idea of what that house is worth. So let's just say it's worth $1 million. And the agent's probably helped her come up with that. So hopefully the agent was ethical and like helped them come up with the right dollar amount before she told her, I want to buy the house. um, and then if she says, hey, I'd love to buy this house, I'll buy it from you off market. I'll waive my commission. Commission on $1 million house is like ballpark is like 25,000. So she's saving 25 grand. It's like getting an offer for 1,025,000. Plus she does actually it's a million, like a 1,050,000 offer because she doesn't have to pay the buyer side commission either. Then she might say, oh yeah, let's do it. And she actually gets a better deal. But that's how it worked. I will say that anytime you are representing yourself, you are an agent and you are a buyer or seller, you just have to be so careful because it's like you hold the power and you hold all the knowledge too. So if you do anything shady in that transaction, it'll come to light at some point and you're gonna get screwed. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're an introvert at heart, which I think is something people can relate to. Was there like a game plan or something you focused on when connecting to new people, and like how did you market yourself?
Yeah. So I'm obviously I'm good when I'm talking to someone, but if someone says, "Hey, let's go over to this group of people who you don't know and go introduce yourself." No way, that's the worst. Um, so it's forcing myself to do those things when I know I have to do it for my business or for, whatever that reason is, it's important for me personally to go or professionally to go do that. I just have to make myself do the uncomfortable things. The more you do something that's uncomfortable, the more it becomes comfortable over time.
This is the question that was skipped over, but I know you're very connected to your community, being the head coach for a basketball team, donating to the Grand Bay High School. Um, so what's your day-to-day life look like? Asking like your priorities, like would you take time off your business towards the basketball if they need it, or what's your priorities with all of your
Yeah.
commitment?
Time management's a very big thing for me. I have three businesses plus I coach at the high school and plus I have a family. The great thing about being an entrepreneur is you can, carve up your day how you see fit. The bad thing about being an entrepreneur is there's no days off. Like I think about work on Sunday at 4 p.m., at Saturday at 10 a.m. There's no off. But I love it. So for me, it's like if I'm coaching basketball at Grand Bay High School and we're in season, I know I've got practice from 3:30 to 5:30. So that time is carved out. It's a done deal. Like I'm not picking up my phone. That's and I schedule everything else around that. Like for example, today we have three construction projects going on right now. So I talked to two of those clients. I didn't have to make any site visits, which saved me a bunch of time. I've got one agent that's getting a house ready to sell. We talked. I've got one listing that's happening right now, and one issue came up there. So I was on the phone talking to that person. For my youth basketball league, we're having issues getting into a certain gym at 4 p.m. The custodian hasn't been letting my coach in and being there. And so we've had to send end practices and call parents to come pick up their kids twice this week. So I had a meeting with the Eureka Union School District and the people that kind of run that to say, hey guys, what can we do here? So that was like an hour of my day. So a lot of my day is reactive and putting out fires, but I have to always carve out like an hour to 2 hours to do things that are going to propel the business forward. Right now, like I said, I need to hire more agents. So I spent an hour today on a social media post that'll go on Instagram and Facebook that kind of lays a few things out, trying to entice agents to give me a call. So I always have to carve out time to do the kind of the thinking stuff and not the reactive stuff, but a lot of my day is reactive.
I think that's all we have for you.
Thank you, Mr.
Cool. Thank you. was fun. Good questions.
Would you like to?
Yeah.
Now, if anybody is here from County Drake's who is looking for extra credit, I put a pad there. I'm her office mate. I'll make sure she gets notified that you're here.